Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 10 of the Partnership Guys podcast. We're excited to be here and glad you're listening along. Today, we're going to talk about how partnerships can help you through crisis and how a strong partnership is really critical to being able to survive a crisis and the benefit, which is really the true benefit of a partnership, is that ability to be able to work with someone else to help you work through challenges, work through crises, work through situations that as a solo entrepreneur are significantly more difficult to get through. I can start by talking about Todd and I. We first partnered up, or not long after we first partnered up. We had a business in the New York City area, New Jersey, northern New Jersey, and most of our customers were in Long Island. So we had to go across the river through Manhattan in order to get our product out to New York, to Long Island. And it wasn't so much 9/11, which was a disaster of disasters. It was the whole anthrax scare after that that caused us the most challenges. And if you remember, that anthrax was this white powder that somebody, I don't even remember who, somebody was mailing to businesses in and around New York and also DC in order to kind of like, and what it would do is it would clear the building, right? You had to totally clear the building because it was super, super dangerous. Our main product going from New Jersey to New York was a white powder. And so, on top of traffic being limited because of what was going on from 9/11, products were being monitored and checked before they could be shipped out. And we couldn't ship product. Basically, it almost shut our business down. And while this was the beginning of the partnership that Todd and I have had for over 25 years, we very quickly rallied and understood that, okay, we've got to really figure out a way between the two of us how to move forward with this. And we did. And we figured out how we needed to change the business. We figured out that we needed to look at different geographies for our products, different product lines, different customer bases, different industries. And we spent a lot of work and a lot of time on that very quickly, which for me, speaking for me personally, if it was just me, I, I never would have been able to figure it out. I would have shut the doors. Nobody would have said a word because it was justified. It would have been justified to do that. But because we had this, I mean, it's even stronger now, but a strong partnership back then, we were able to work together to figure this all out.
Yeah, no doubt. It was just a crazy few months. Anybody who lives in the New York metro area understands it was really years before things started to come back to normal. But those first few months, everyone was still numb. Work wasn't being done. People weren't in our area because it was funeral after funeral after funeral. And as tragic as that was, to try to just mentally navigate that as just a human while you're still trying to run a business and you're still trying to make sure your employees can live their lives and you could live yours was we were thrown into this anthrax thing, like of all things. And the key point was the sorting facility that wasn't far from our office. We're right in the middle of DC and New York. So a lot of it was sorting through a particular sorting office in New Jersey. And that was what was causing some issues. Just being as stunned as we were after the absolute disgusting and tragic events of 9/11 to then be like, all right, how do we navigate this? It was within a month. I mean, I still have all the notifications and all that stuff on my bulletin board, so I don't forget. But it without having a partner, I, even through just with the 9/11 part, just having somebody to commiserate with that understands, like, I get it. It was traumatic, and that was amazing. But then to have to figure out how to pivot your business at the same exact time in such a big way. I mean, it ended up long term obviously helping us continue to grow, but without having the support of Steven at the time, I think I would have been moving on. And that was a great opportunity. And our biggest test up to that point, because it was a newer partnership, and that really catapulted us into realizing that we have to, we're working on the partnership as much as we're working on the business. And it really set up the next 23, 24 years.
Yeah, and that's, for me, I know I talk a lot about the one bad partnership I had, but the great partnerships, the things that we've done, I would have never been able to do by myself, and none of us would have been able to do by ourselves. One of my examples is making the first ever girls lacrosse headgear. And not only was there constant crisis in the 3.5 years it took to make it, ups, downs, all different kinds of testing, erroneous testing that led us in one direction, and then finding out that there were errors in the testing and going a different direction. There's no way. There were, dozens and dozens and dozens of points in just making the product that I would have given up if it wasn't for having a great partner in Sean Springs, former NFL player, great friend. Call him constantly, and then some other really good friends, my friend Jared and other friends who were very involved in the whole process of making it. And then even after we made it, as hard as it was to do that, and then we had the first ever girls lacrosse headgear, that in and of itself was another crisis among crises. We were putting the first ever headgear on fields in girls lacrosse, and so I talk
and getting
about
a tremendous amount of trying to get a tremendous amount of pushback from the lacrosse world for some reason.
Yeah, how would I have dealt with that without great business partners, friends, mentors who were along with me for the ride? And it's not that, they helped me or that's why it happened. That's, I got up in the morning with energy because I knew that I had people to call and talk to and say, where do you think we should go from here? And there were so many mornings and so many conversations. I had a coach, tell me that I'm the problem and that if I were by myself, I would have walked away. But I just had people around me who were like, no, that's not stopping us. That's only fueling us. And having a partnership that, you can rely on each other and have those skills and mend them together, mesh them together. It gives you the ability to do anything.
I mean, we've talked a lot about both on air and off about trust and respect and alignment and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, this is where it all comes together. Right? Is that, as a partnership, you want to make sure that you have that trust and respect so that when these things happen, you can stay aligned. I mean, it would have been very easy for Todd and I to say, different things about the direction that we wanted to go forward. I could have said, well, you know what? I think we got to push through and just keep selling this stuff, in Long Island. And Todd could be saying, no, we really need to look at different industries. And if we don't trust and respect each other and we're not aligned, all we're going to do is end up butting heads and actually accomplish nothing. And so that's why it's doing all this other work when you're not in crisis, when things are good. When business is good is why that it pays off in these times. It pays off in the good times, but when it comes to, situations where you've really got to kind of buckle down and make sure you're aligned and have those conversations where you might not agree because, as entrepreneurs, we know, and you don't. That's the attitude. But
and that was the one bad partnership.
A way to be. What's that?
And that was the one bad partnership didn't have, and we had a great business. There was no crisis. There really was. It was just a great business from the jump. There was an incredible opportunity there. We seized on the opportunity. No crisis in business whatsoever. There was a crisis in the partnership.
Now imagine if the sun stopped shining.
Yeah,
you never would have made it.
That's right. It probably would have been better though. It all would have been better if the business wasn't as successful as it was right away. And that's the point is, that I would have gladly taken that 6 months of no sunset, no business and we're done here. But instead,
the crazy
there was
thing
plenty
is,
of sun.
And it's not one and done. You're around long enough. Life has been crazy the last couple of decades, and I'm sure every generation will say that. But we were able to, after 9/11, now we are hit, as we recover from that, and as long as it takes, and we're on our path forward, we got hit with the 2008 Great Recession. That was another, gut punch, not just to us, obviously, to the entire nation, but trying to, and that's when the less strong businesses, the less fortunate people, a lot of the solo entrepreneurs, they went out of business. They couldn't pivot in time. They were worrying about too much. They couldn't divide and conquer. They had nobody to bounce stuff off of. So we went to that. And then funny enough, Stephen and I bought a business, acquired one back in 2016. And it's 10 years ago to this day that the mill burnt to the ground, right? So how do you bounce back from that? And then, 8 months later.
After we made the deal.
After we made the deal, yeah.
We could have been we would have had to jump out the second story window to get out of the building.
And then, and later that year, our area got hit by Hurricane Sandy, which was devastating to the area. You don't realize what happens after these national disasters hit areas that you don't live in, and it's out of the news cycle. It's out of the news cycle, but it's not out of everybody's life. I live in an area it's taken over 10 years to rebuild from Sandy, and, obviously then you go into COVID and all that stuff. But each one of those crises helped strengthen our partnership and our business because we realized, all right, we can get through this. We know the only thing you can't do is stand still, push forward when others are retracting. And without that support and encouragement, it's very easy just to do what a lot of people do, which is curl up in a ball and then slowly watch their livelihood disappear.
It's not even external events, right? Sometimes it's personal or internal events. I mean, we've had situations where Todd was out of the office for 3 months due to a surgery, an accident that he got into. And so that only strengthened our partnership because I, in fact, made him stay out another month. So he was out 4 months, and where he didn't want to be out that much time, I'm sure, and I know he didn't want to, the support that our partnership was able to provide to Todd in that instance. When I got divorced, right, I'm sure that there were days where my head was not in the game. Don't shake your head.
Not at all.
I see that.
Speaking from a man who got divorced as well, it's impossible for that to be the case,
Right? And so just, having that support in the partnership not only allows you to get through the situation, but you come out stronger, right? And so the next time something pops up, it's even better, And so, that's why it's really it's so important to build these relationships and work on these relationships in your partnership when there's nothing going on, when you don't have to. Right? It's putting that time in when you don't have to.
Yeah, another one for me is when my college friends and I built our trading floor late 90s. There were 10 crises a day, whether it was, the system going down for one of us, all of us, trading. It was a high stress. We weren't perfect as partners. We were young, but because the trust and respect is there, that's how we got through it. I couldn't imagine doing that and building that on my own. There were hundreds of times that I would have given up. I would have said, I can't do this. I am starting a young family. There's a lot of stress there. Let me do something else that is more stable and gives me more peace of mind. Same thing with the girls lacrosse headgear and so many things I've done. I would have given up easily if I had to do it by myself. It's having the people to lean on and the partnerships and doing it the right way that means everything.
I mean, look at the three of us. I mean, we're a pretty young partnership. We've all been in business a long time, but the three of us have not been partners for very long. And, we're practicing what we're talking about. I mean, we could do remote meetings. I mean, we're not in the same space every day, but we've made it a point to every, couple weeks, once a month, whatever it is, been getting together for a few hours and blocking out time so that we can not just work on building our business, but also work on building our partnership, right? That's on the agenda. And so we make sure to include that on every meeting, every time we have an opportunity to work on that. We had a meeting just the other day, and Rob came up to Todd and I are typically in the same office. Rob came up, and we had an opportunity to spend a few hours together and just kind of worked on some business stuff, but also worked on some partnership stuff. Made sure that we're all on the same page. What's going on in your life, what's going on in my life, that kind of a thing. And it makes a difference because we're not in crisis, but there's going to be something that pops up, probably Todd's fault, but something will pop up.
But to build something together, to talk about impacting lives together, even the wins, the impacting lives, I enjoy it so much better when I'm sharing it with business partners. When you're sharing that together, it's amazing. It's the wins. It's great to have with somebody else. Things that I've done by myself, I don't come home and say, look, I had a great win today. It's just not, but to do it with somebody, it's a whole different, it's part of a team. It feels really good to have the support of somebody else. And it's not just the crisis. It's the good stuff too. That's hard to celebrate when you're doing it by yourself, and really easy to celebrate when you're doing it with people you really enjoy doing it with and being around and accomplishing things with, and seeing, how other people that you're working with, you're impacting their lives too, or impacting each other's lives in so many different ways.
Yeah, high-fiving alone isn't that fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know you've
Man,
done it.
you connect with
We
your
know you've
buds.
tried it many times,
It's
Todd.
awesome. I know, it's just
I mean, you can
doing it together,
share
it's more like just a high
Yeah,
clap. It's not as fun,
exactly. One clap. I mean, sharing what you've done. I mean, my family is supportive of me. They will celebrate with me whatever wins I have in business, but it's not the same. I mean, they don't really know, right? And having a partner that you like, having a partner that you trust and respect, and being able to share those wins, even those little wins, is very different than sharing it with the rest of the world. They know what it took to get there. Even with your employees, you can't. They don't understand. And, having a partner where you can really get that support and that celebratory whatever with makes all the difference in the world, because it just gives you motivation to keep going, keep going, keep going. And yeah, solo entrepreneurs can do that, but it's not as rewarding.
Yeah, and I think the support that you're talking about is great. Family support, friend support, it's great. The good, the bad, to have the support of people who are telling you, I'm with you, I'm here. But the business partnership support of, we're going to figure this out together. We're going to roll up our sleeves, work even harder, and we're going to figure this out together. That's a different kind of support that, to me, and like I said, I don't know how people do it without having that.
And let's face it, not everybody brings every crisis into their house because they don't want to stress people, stress their spouses, their kids, their parents, about stuff that they just don't have the context of. So it's really hard to share certain things because there's no context, or they don't, the severity of the crisis is so big that they go into panic mode, and that's not helpful. And you get it because they're not connected to it the way you are. I need to be able to say, okay, this is a potential iceberg here. We got to navigate around this thing instead of going full steam. And you guys I could talk to you about that and, get freaked out, as opposed to, maybe my spouse, who just she might not get everything that I'm saying, the nuance of some of it, and might go off in a completely opposite direction, which then makes you start to act a little bit different because you want to make sure that they're appeased. I'm not saying I hide stuff from my spouse. It's just I understand that it's not always beneficial to explain certain things without the context.
To share it in a different way.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, we know that as entrepreneurs, the highs are high and the lows are low, and they can flip in an instant. But somebody outside of the business doesn't really understand that context. And so having a good partner and having a strong partnership gives you the ability to be able to not have to explain all that. And like you said, you're not going to get freaked out if I come to you and say, look, we have this situation happening. I come to somebody that's not my partner in the business, and they're going to be like, holy shit, how are you going to live through that? And I'm thinking, I just did. Right? It's done. And I've got partners that can help me figure that out. And that's a huge benefit.
Absolutely.
I think this
All
was
right.
a great
Great conversation.
Good talk, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being open about it. This is the Partnership Guys podcast, episode 10. I'd love for you guys to visit us at thepartnershipguys.com. And thank you to Rob and Todd for being here today, and for everybody that's listening. And we'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.